Hello there, boys and girls. Since it is the Roaring Twenties, well, it's not the 1920s, it's the 2020s. But in spirit of that, what was created in the 1920s, you know him, you love him. That's right, Mickey Mouse. Yay! That lovable character, that mouse, he gets in all kinds of mischief and trouble. And today we're going to be talking about his creator, Walt Elias Disney. That's right. And if you don't know this channel, well, let me tell you, folks, this is the truth behind the magic. And I am your host, Blaze, and we're joined by my good co-host, Jason. Jason, take a bow.
I don't know what that was, but it was
You're
something.
good. That's all good, friend. And like I say, in spirit of Walt, I also have a Walt-like mustache right now. And we're getting ready to start it off all hot with how we were introduced to Walt Disney and how he our personal opinions of him, the Disney family, stuff like that. So with that, we'll get right into it.
Yep, I think for me, well, it's almost impossible to not know who Walt Disney is. Like, even as a child, you might not necessarily grasp that the Disney company is named after him at first, but, like, I mean, even as a kid, I knew who he was. I mean, Walt was the most photographed man of the 20th century, so at some point, you see pictures and videos of him growing up. I can't think of anything in particular as far as, like, movies. I don't remember any of, like, the VHSs having, like, clips of him before the movie or anything. There may have been some that did, but, like, you just knew who he was. I mean, even as a child, I recognized him. It wasn't until I was an adult that I really learned who he was, but like I said, definitely as a child, you do kind of understand that he is the big part of this company. I mean, honestly, I don't remember exactly, but I probably thought he was still alive when I was a kid, just because Disney, I mean, they still market him essentially so heavily. He is still a big part of the marketing, so you just think, oh, this is the guy that runs Disney.
Right.
It's kind of ironic that they market him so much, because I don't think what he would have wanted to do comes into the decision for most of what they do now, but yeah, they're definitely still making money off the man, that is for sure.
Right. Yeah, and since, I am from, as you all know, I am from Kansas City, still am here, born and raised. We know a lot about Walt here. I know those people in California and LA are like, well, he created me. No, darn it. The mouse was created right here in Kansas City, and we will fight that until the cows come home, because that's the truth. We can't help it that, some people feel some type of way about it and want him to be California. Because no, California gets everything. People from the Midwest need something too, darn it. And one of those things is the mouse. So, so honestly, I've straight away, you can tell who Walt Disney is just based on his look. He always wore a suit. I think even a gray suit in particular. The hair, the mustache, all those things, the voice, how he describes things, all those things and more, basically a long, interpretation of what. In fact, there's even a guy right now who looks exactly like Walt Disney, and several cast members are just blown away by how much he does look like the actual Walt Disney, who sadly passed away a long time ago. That's it's a shame that the good ones go, but his spirit lives on, and not everything Disney does, but in some things. So,
right, and I don't think most people realize, like, most just casual fans, or not even people who are Disney fans, but people who just know of the company, I don't think a lot of people realize that Walt literally had a first-hand touch on most of the early stuff that came out of Disney. in most of the stuff that is still the biggest, the most popular characters and those kind of things.
Right.
Because he was an animator before becoming the head of the company. I don't know
Right.
if Kansas City, if that was when it was called the Disney Brothers Studio. That may have been before it was actually called Disney Studios. But like he was the head animator there. He created some of the great characters. I don't remember if it was him exactly that actually created Mickey Mouse as the character. It may have been him and Iwerks, which was like his main guy back in those days. But he certainly created the voice and the name for the character.
Yeah.
That classic voice, he was the best to do it, really. I mean, you can still, on some of the cartoons, it's him doing it if you go back and watch the original ones. But yeah, we were just talking about the whole famous train ride story where he was going to call him Mortimer Mouse, which there did end up being a character called Mortimer Mouse, but it was a different character completely.
Right.
But he asked Lillian, like, do you think this is a good name? She said, no, you need to call him Mickey. So that's like a famous story. But Walt had gone through a lot of trials in his day, because some people even add to that story and saying that he was on the train back from meeting with Charles Mintz, who was a big rival animator. But he had been basically chartered out by his company to create Oswald the Rabbit. And by the time he got back to LA, Charles Mintz had like stolen his entire animator squad, except for just a few people, and he also ended up with Oswald because Disney didn't actually own him, since he had just been chartered out to create him. But yeah, Disney, Walt definitely went through a lot.
Yeah, and I would just say this, folks. Think about this for 1 second. Universal Studios hired Walt Disney for Oswald. Let me rephrase, because some people can't believe that the two giants worked together. Well, let me say, way back when, before all the hoopla and fanfare and stuff like that, yeah, poor Walt and his brother Roy were two guys from Missouri. They lived in Kansas City for a little while, and they were really thinking of some way to get into the cartoon industry, because back then cartoons weren't, honestly, no one cared about cartoons back then. They were just made to make people laugh. No one really remembered who some of the characters were. And Walt's like, I want to take characters that I can relate to, that everyone can relate to, so that through that we can build a fan base and a conjecture, and then that way we can come up with more characters. And like, maybe they're not exactly like Mickey, but we know someone who is like Mickey in certain aspects, like they're a go-getter, or they're a leader, or this or that, or they're struggling with their relationship. Whatever the case may be, we can relate to that character a lot more than, let's say, Felix the cat back then, who just did stuff and he was a cat. I mean, that was basically it for some of the most famous cartoons from back then. But yeah, so no, it did happen. And then think about this, folks. So after Universal said, yeah, we're taking all your stuff, we don't give a damn, we got the money. Walt said, you know what? That's fine. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to make more money than you. So at the end, he got his way, and who knows, maybe that day will come, and Jason and I will probably be 80 or something when it does. But for all I know, maybe the monopoly charges, no longer apply, and Universal and Disney become one, and Disney's buying out Universal. I just don't know. You never know. I mean, they got the money for it. So they just might. When that day comes, I don't know if the world will be ready for it, but we will see. We will definitely see. But yeah, but no, I just wanted to, speaking of the train ride, I know there's a new History Channel show documentary about Walt and everything like that. And just to clarify some things, one, he was not this have no idea what to do with business, was a complete goofball, just got drunk to get drunk and brag about himself and, stuff like that. He knew what he was doing. I mean, he had had enough hardships in his life, especially dealing with his dad, how he was, and, the hardships they had to deal here in Kansas City. So he knew exactly what he was getting into. Although Roy is always seen as like the figurehead of like, okay, he used the brains, and Walt's just kind of like does the magic, the magician, if you will. That's very far from the truth. That they both work equally together, and it shows. I mean, I don't know if Roy was truly as in much control as people assume or think he was. I don't know if the company really blossoms to what it becomes, as the decades go on. So definitely something that is crazy. But no, I know another thing for him here that happened in, I think it was either Kansas City or LA, for Walt, poor guy. He was actually buying a house for his mother, and speaking of Mother's Day coming up, he bought a house for his mom, and he had some friends like install the heating and air conditioning, and they didn't realize that there was a leak in the heating system from the carbon monoxide, and sadly he lost his mom in a very tragic way, and it hurt him. Even though he was probably about in his 30s, it hurt him severely. In fact, there is a myth or belief that's why a lot of the Disney characters either lose their moms or do not have moms, because he lost his in such a tragic way. And he's like, basically he's like, if I don't have a mom, my characters won't have a mom, kind of. And I don't know how much of that is legend or actual fact, but I know it's very interesting to me that he truly cared about that in his character so much, considering it was such a personal loss for him.
Right, and yeah, that was in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was the first house that he had built for his parents when they got out there, but I know it was a house that he had gotten for them. So, it's pretty much known that really affected him for the rest of his life. Like, some people say he never recovered from it, which I can believe that.
Yeah.
But yeah, something big you talked about was the dichotomy between what children want to do and what adults want to do when they go to a theme park or watch a movie. That's really Disney's bread and butter. It historically has, but I think they've lost their way with it a little bit. Like, I think some of the stuff they put out does a very good job of, like, crossing the line, but I feel like there's more of a divide now. That new Moana walkthrough attraction at Epcot, I got to do it when I was down there a couple months ago. Completely for kids. Like, there might be a handful of adults out there that say, I enjoyed this. Like, there is some kind of interesting stuff to look at, but not really. I walked through it and I was like, oh, when does the queue end? Oh, that was the queue. The attraction was the queue. It's like what they say about the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse, like the attraction.
Right.
It's the longest queue in Disney World, but no. And I understand that there has to be stuff that is only for children, like especially very small children. You have to have that in the theme parks, but I don't know. I feel like nowadays they either want to release something that is just so thrilling that kids won't even want to ride it, or they put out something that just bores adults to sleep. I don't know. There's just there seems to be a bit of a loss at that, but I don't know. I still think they probably do better than Universal, because frankly, Universal does not know how to create something that's just for children. Like, I would say 90% of their attractions are like just for adults, pretty much. But That's kind of getting off the subject of this, but yeah, Walt, that was his big thing, was finding, especially with Disneyland, finding something that everyone could enjoy at the same time. And he really did an extremely good job of that. And Magic Kingdom specifically and Disneyland are still the best parks in the world for that, I would say. Because Epcot, not a kid's park by any means. They've tried to change it. Like I said, the Moana attraction, it was needed in Epcot just because there's hardly anything in there for children. Hollywood Studios, pretty much the most thrilling of at least all the Disney World parks. Animal Kingdom is good all around. But yeah, Magic Kingdom really is the East Coast personification of what Walt Disney wanted a theme park to be. Like, if you watch videos of Disneyland versus Magic Kingdom, I know that Disneyland is special because it is like the place he actually walked. Well, he did technically walk on Disney property, but he actually walked the streets of Disneyland. But if you watch videos of it, it is pretty underwhelming. And that's what I've heard from people who go there, is that when you've been to Magic Kingdom and then go there, it's like, oh, it's a mini castle and everything. But yeah, definitely just a superb job of finding a medium that everyone could enjoy it.
Right. Now, folks, this might shock you. Not only was that Walt's viewpoint, his viewpoint also, and it's very famous for it, was, well, two things. One, he did not want the American family to, give an arm and a leg to go. He wanted that made very clear, that he did not want people to be overcharged to go, because he knew if they do, then they're not going to want to go, and that's just bad for business. So he knew right away, that was like rule one, like, I don't care if we're losing money on ticket sales, we cannot overcharge people, which obviously they threw out the window. It was like Monsters University when Mike was out. I was like, I want you to think of every instinct you have and bury it deep, deep. I mean, that's basically what the ticket price, because they're like, we're going to charge as much as we can, and we can because it's Disney and we know you're going to keep coming back, which is a shame because, again, I don't think Walt would approve of that. But the second thing was, he truly did care about the people that worked for him. And that was a huge aspect, which, you see it somewhat, but, when, as, Jason and I are fellow former cast members, we saw a little love, but to the extent that Walt wanted, probably not. Because he definitely wanted his cast members to really, he said himself, a huge part. Like, there is no Disneyland, there is no Disney World without the cast members. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I think that's something that, sadly, the new Disney Corporation has kind of lost its way on a little bit.
Yeah, I really wish they would embody more of the spirit of Walt when it comes to that, because, I mean, he was the master of seeing the potential in people and facilitating them to fulfill that potential. With the way it is now, I don't think anyone really at any point level of the company receives that, but, I mean, hopefully there's always a chance for change. I don't know if it'll happen, but you never know. There could be a massive change someday.
I mean, when the CEO gets paid like $250 some million just to sit in a chair, I mean, and you're not really. You can hope for change, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to have to. Someone with that kind of money is going to have, or that power is going to have to be like, hey, I know we have shareholders, but we got to get back to our roots. When they do, I'm telling you, Disney might have I know it had a renaissance in the 90s. Who knows? Maybe it has another one. And, maybe Jason and I will go back, see if everyone's really good, or we're back. Nah, just stay away. Who knows?
Yep. And now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I just had kind of an idea of something that would really fit along the lines of this video. Because you had mentioned, I believe it was 3 or 4 videos ago, I think it was in the ranking the parks video, how Hollywood Studios is like the best place to go to really get that classic, like, Walt
Right.
Disney feeling going down Main Street. So I was thinking we could discuss where we think are the best places on Disney World property to kind of feel connected to Walt, or at least connected with classic Disney. Not even him
Right.
specifically, but
Mm-hmm.
connected with that era.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, definitely one of those places, obviously, is looking right in front of Cinderella's castle. I mean, that just looking straight at it. I'm not talking about like, looking at the statue. I mean, if you do look at the statue and the castle behind it, you might get a sentimental feeling for sure. But just looking at just taking it all in and in sheer majesty and beauty, you're like, man, this is a hell of a place that I know Walt would be so proud of. Another one's just, like I say, just the entrance of Magic Kingdom, just walking down Main Street itself, seeing the little turn of the century buildings and shops that have real funny names that are named after some of the main animators that they've had over the years. I mean, that is truly a awesome Disney feel. Now, I don't know if there's anything in Animal Kingdom that would give that Disney feel necessarily. I mean, maybe you would think of something, I don't know. But for me, definitely the Magic Kingdom part. Epcot for sure. With just looking at some of the, well, definitely America. I mean, he was. There's one thing Walt was. He was a patriot. Okay, there's no mince-meaning words there. He loved that. So, yeah, you look at the American Pavilion, you're like, man, thank you, Walt. That's one of. So there's that. There's some of the older charms, like listening to some of the music in the, even in Paris, the France Pavilion. I definitely get a sense of Walt there as well. But yeah, and then like we say, Hollywood Studios, just walking main entrance, walking through the little 1950s themed building, seeing the people on the street perform. Now, I don't know if they still do the street performing, but if they do, that definitely helps put into aspect. But yeah, for Epcot, I don't know. Maybe. I know he liked certain types of animals. Maybe like the birds. Maybe like seeing the birds at first. You can kind of get something from it, but or if you're just doing like Disney in general, just seeing like like if you go on the safari and see the lions, and thinking of Simba and the Lion King. So I guess that's the Animal Kingdom's part, is like when you go and actually see the animals on the safari. That's kind of a cool way to experience a more closer connection to Disney. Not only is the man, but his dream of what the Disney company could be as well. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, Walt definitely had an affinity for animals. Like, I don't know how much is on the actual history books of him loving animals, but I mean, the Wide World of Disney used to do pretty much weekly specials on animals, so he clearly had some kind of love for them, and I think that was a big reason that they made Animal Kingdom, was that Disney had so much of a connection to animals. And yeah, Epcot, I agree. One area I could think of would be the England Pavilion, because I'm sure a lot of you know Saving Mr. Banks, that whole story with Mary Poppins, so that would probably be like the area I would think of in there. But yeah, really just the whole World Showcase, because he was such an international person. And I know Epcot did not really end up being what he had envisioned it to be, but I mean, that whole park is kind of a tribute to him in some way. Yeah, definitely Main Street and Cinderella Castle. The Emporium is great. The Main Street Bakery. Well, I think it's literally Starbucks now, but I always call it the Main Street Bakery.
Yeah, the Carousel of Progress. Yeah.
Carousel of Progress. Wasn't there that rumor that he would fly around with the grandma or the mother from Carousel of Progress?
Yeah.
Is there
So
of his own mother?
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say, yeah. So supposedly another Disney lore is that, yeah, Walt thought the grandmother in the Carousel of Progress looked so much like his own mom. Supposedly cast members would catch him talking to it, making jokes with it, laughing with it, like, and even buying tickets to come to the park. I mean, that's how much supposedly Walt loved that animatronic. That's how much. And then supposedly it got retired and is now in the Haunted Mansion, supposedly. So a lot of, so if you love Disney lore, that's one of those rumors or legends that, so after, Walt passed, they put it in the Haunted Mansion and stuff like that. So just something to keep in mind.
Right, yeah, and Haunted Mansion, I know he worked on that some. It was before it was actually like a ride concept, more when it was the walkthrough, but that's another kind of one that has a Walt connection. Pirates of the Caribbean, that was one of the last ones he had really had any input on. Small World, even though the Small World we have out here is not the one that he actually was a part of, but of course, being at the 1964 World's Fair, it really has a connection to that era as well. Hollywood Studios, like we kind of already mentioned, walking down Hollywood Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard. Like, I think that's the best ambiance of any Disney park. I may have mentioned that in a previous video, but it really is just a very special feeling in there. The Boardwalk Resort, I don't know how much of a tie he had with, like, New Jersey, that kind of region, but the feeling of that resort is great. The Polynesian and the Contemporary, once again, I don't really know how much he actually worked on the ideas for those, but I know they were in discussion when he was still alive. They were going to do an Asian resort and a Mediterranean resort as well. They ended up doing the Grand Floridian and Wilderness Lodge instead. But definitely the Magic Kingdom Resort area would be another area where I think you could really feel connected to Walt. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it as far as places on property where I think you can really feel the lore.
Yeah, I mean, another thing, I guess, another place too, I know they moved the statue around, but there's actually one of Roy Disney with Minnie. It was just when you walked in Magic Kingdom. It has moved. I think it's moved to the side now. They just keep moving it back and forth, so I don't know its exact location in Magic Kingdom. I know it's close to the front, but I will give Roy this. He did, that 90s Renaissance, like Lion King, Pocahontas, stuff like that. He was a major driver for that, which, again, people are shocked because they're like, what? He was just supposed to be a financial whiz. That may be, but he also was a huge, instigator of making sure those were Disney-esque. Because, when you watch those movies, you can feel all the emotions: happy, sad, mad at the villain, happy when they get defeated, happy for the main character. The main character gets, all the things they dreamed for in the end. True Walt Disney-esque experience, even though Roy carried it out. Now, Roy was the older brother, so if Walt had lived, I don't know how long he would have lived had he not died from throat cancer. Tragically, I just don't know. I know he wouldn't be alive right now. He'd probably been dead for 20 years to this point, but at least. But if he did make it that long, who knows? I mean, we could be talking Disney World might look completely different. There's another thing people don't realize is even though the ride of him, we know him, his concept, Walt's concept, okay, after a certain amount of time, we need to change them out and put in new ones. And, again, tragically, that stopped at a certain point. So at the time, the heads of the company, including Roy K., to honor his memory, will keep many of the main attractions that he worked on and were a part of. But, yeah, no, Walt's mind was, hey, if we can keep new stuff, get rid of the old stuff, we'll keep going from there. So that's another aspect some people don't realize either, which is he wanted it constantly to be like this revolving door of different attractions for Disneyland, because at the time he didn't have much, real estate to work with. I mean, he had bought Disney World, the property. In fact, he had to even could come and buy it under a fake name, because if he did it under his real name, he knew he would have been charged an arm and a leg and probably wouldn't have gotten half as much or even a quarter as much as he did. So that's just some. And because think about it, Disney World, where it was at, it was a swamp. Okay, it was the backwoods of, it was in deep south, and he went from that to this, basically Orlando went from this town no one knew much of to holy shit, it is the face of, or holy crap, I guess I should say, is the name and face of animation and cartoon lore. So yeah, that's just one thing to keep in mind.
Right, and I will say, the Disney Renaissance, that was Roy E. Disney. Roy, the original Roy's son.
Right, my bad.
It's all right. But it is still accurate to say that Roy O., the father, really did kind of contribute to the Disney Renaissance in a way. Because, people talk about the Disney Renaissance, which is the movies, but there was also really a Disney Renaissance going on at the parks at the same time. And if Roy would have not put in the infrastructure in place by finishing Magic Kingdom, building the Magic Kingdom resort area, I don't think any of that would have ever happened. So that's why I've always said, even though Walt was a big part of building Disney World to an extent, like, purchasing the land, laying stuff out, Roy was really the one that guaranteed that it happened, because they could have just said, oh, we're not going to do this now.
Right.
But it was Walt's final dream, pretty much, so none of that would be there right now without Roy. And it's really just crazy how much stuff is at Disney World. Like, Disneyland is impressive in its own right, but when you look at the number of parks and resorts, and it's only like 1/3 or 1/4 of what they could build there, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Walt bought the property for Disney World to just come up with as many parks, attractions, hotels, whatever, as his mind could think of. And again, that's why, I can't emphasize enough how sad it is he was gone too soon. Because who knows, for all we know, today that entire property could be covered. There might not even be, how it's real open for those who have never been, or for those who have been there quite a bit. When you go through the main entrance, it's just nothing but acreage until you finally hit the main parks and stuff like that. Had Walt still been alive for a little longer, who knows how many parks it would have. It might have 20 parks for all we know. I mean, it's just spitballing, but I mean, that's just a sheer example of how much he wanted the company to just have a pure, restrained source of growth and expansion, not only in the physical sense, but in the animation sense. And I guess another fun fact for Walt, I know everybody Van Dyke in Mary Poppins as the banker. Well, funnily enough, Walt didn't let me do the role, for free. I actually had to give a little bit of my funds to the Disney Animation Studio to help it out before he actually got to do the role. And the kids were funny because they thought it was not Dick Van Dyke, but just a very, very old man. And they were famously quoted in saying, like, we just thought he was going to keel over and die right then and there. So this is one of those things where it's like, Walt was like, I'll let you do this, but at a price. Like, and obviously thank goodness it happened, because Dick Van Dyke, along with Julia Roberts, just incredibly makes Mary Poppins, that movie, just fly off the screen in such fashion. So love that. Just for
Yep, definitely some interesting information there. Yeah, I always find it funny when I hear about the kids in Mary Poppins not knowing that it was Dick Van Dyke, because I think that's crazy. But yeah, I think a really good way to wrap this up would be to kind of just sum up in like a brief statement what Walt Disney means to you.
Right. So to me, Walt Disney, not only the person as well as the company, it's family. It's about overcoming immense odds. Never stop pursuing your dream, no matter how crazy. Always being able to do it for yourself, having a lot of self pride and being able to say, I did this and I want to keep growing. That never ending sense of like, okay, I'm not just content where I'm at. I want to keep growing, keep doing more, making others successful and happy and being able to do well. And, truly leaving a legacy, because at the end of the day, Walt Disney has left a ginormous, both brothers really, ginormous legacy that some people can try to touch, but I don't think they're going to. I mean, there's the Elon Musks of the world and all that good stuff, but they can have all the money in the world, that's fine. But the legacy and the impact the Disney brothers have, not only just in the U.S., but the world, period, never be forgotten. It's truly timeless. So that's just one of those is that true Disney magic is timeless. And hopefully the current Walt Disney Company gets back to that, because when they do, it'll unlock a whole new world of things. Not to be a cliche and add a whole new world from Aladdin, but truly, it will. It really will. It'll be like a completely different, it will harken back to a time where everybody remembers how Disneyland World was, what really made them want to come back time and time again, and all the fun that they had. So, yeah, to me, definitely those words kind of sum it up, but definitely timeless for sure is how I would describe it.
Yep, I think that is definitely a very good way to put it. I would say a lot of the similar stuff there, but, imagination, ingenuity, creating a product that everyone can enjoy. Like Blaze said, never give up on your dreams. If you want to be an Imagineer someday, go out there and do it. That's what I wanted to do for a while, but I didn't want to get like an engineering degree, and I'm not an artist or anything like that. So I said, no, I think I'll go for the operations side of things, but yeah, I mean, he really was someone. I mean, like I said, he was the most photographed person of the 20th century. That alone tells you what the world thought of the man. And I really hope that Disney will return someday to being at that level of respect and really being at that position in the world as a true beacon of light to pretty much everyone. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what I've got. Oh.
Yep, there he is. So yeah, this is see icons of the century. There he is, right there, the Walt man himself. And like I say, the hair, the mustache, the suit, the tie, you'll always know who that man is. So,
yep, iconic for sure. And I think that's really the perfect way to end it, I think, is with you getting to see Walt Disney himself in the flesh. That was him. We hope you have all enjoyed this episode. Kind of a departure from our normal fare, but that's really kind of what we're going for, because we're trying to get more of a kind of portfolio built up for the kind of stuff we're going to talk about here. So yeah, I guess we will see you next time, and I hope you enjoyed.
See you next time, everybody. Stay magical.